Dollars and Cents is a 2.5-hour seminar that teaches biblical principles of stewardship in a fun and interactive environment. Come learn 7 steps of managing money God's way, how to lower your debt distress, how to invest wisely in uncertain times, and the secrets of true contentment. This seminar will be Sunday, September 7th, with free pizza starting at 12:30 p.m. right after the 11 a.m. service, with Lyndon Kirby starting the teaching at 1:30 p.m. Please RSVP on the events page at canyonviewchurch.com.
Good morning, Canyon View. I'm really excited to share with you that this morning we asked DJ Jergensen to come and share with you. DJ and his wife Vanessa moved down to Durango with their 2 lovely kids, and they have started a vineyard church in Durango. And so we thought it would be a fun time for us to have him come back and share some stories of what's happening. I think you'll really appreciate what he has to share. God bless you guys.
All right. What's going on? How you guys doing? Hello? How you guys doing? Give me some church love. Man, go Broncos. That's a little weird. It's not even the season yet, just because we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. Anybody draft their fantasy football leagues yet? Okay, whatever. It's good to be here with you guys. My name's DJ, and like Kirk said, we live in Durango. We're grateful to be back. We're here to give a little bit of a, this is what's happening in Durango. We were here for 8 years before as youth pastors and I don't know, whatever else we did here. And then about a year ago, we moved to Durango. And so we are trying to plant a church there. Anybody know how to plant a church? Yeah, me neither. What do? We showed up our first day there, and I called Kirk, then the second day, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? We didn't know anybody. It was like, go to work. Well, where's work? And what do you do at work, you know? And so it's like, you go to the street corner and just try to like stare at people until somebody looks back at you and be like, hi, you want to come to our church? And let's just say 1 in like 100 says yes. And then, okay, yeah, where's your church? And that's a great question. I need to think about that, right? So it's been quite a journey. But before we get into that, I just want to say that we love this church. And when Kirk invited us to come back, man, it was like, are you serious? This church means so much to us, and we've grown so much through this church. And sometimes it's hard to even see the impact of a church when you go to it. But now moving away from here, we see it not only in our own lives, but we see it in the sense of like, we'll tell people we're from the vineyard, and they'll be like, oh yeah, there's one of those in Grand Junction, right? How do you know that? You know, it's like, somehow this church has done exactly what Jesus said it's supposed to do, and that is it's gone outside of this nice little fancy building into the community, and it's changed lives. And being here, we got to be a part of that, and we're so grateful for that. And you guys have an incredible pastor. Kirk is, man, he's just been such a good pastor to us, and he's helped us along the way, and he's been so generous to talk to me every time we're struggling, which is about every other day. And he's just been awesome. So anyway, we love this place. We're so excited to be back. I also wanted to just highlight a couple people. We have some friends of ours here, the Buxtons. You guys want to stand up? These guys just moved from Louisiana to Durango to help us plant the church. These guys have the best hearts, and they came and visited Durango. We had no idea they were thinking about moving. They were just vineyard people, so we got together with them. And they quit their jobs. They sold everything, literally. They moved into an 800-square-foot apartment with their 3 kids and them. Yeah, they all lived there. 2 bedrooms, right? 1 bath. And they're just loving it. And the smile on these guys' face is incredible. So anyway, we're just so grateful for them. And we brought them here to help them experience like what church is supposed to be like. And then also we wanted you guys to meet them. And so, yeah, go love on them at the end of the service, okay? And all right, one more thank you. My family's here. My brother and my parents are just visiting. Well, my brother lives here. You'll see him at shows at night. We went to a show at the Ale House, and he leads worship at another church. But anyway, it's awesome to have you guys here. My parents are from Nebraska. They're visiting. Okay, we love you guys. Let's move on. So, thank you. I love how a clap can start and then move. So the church plan. A lot of people have been asking us since we've been back, how's it going? And honestly, that's a really hard question to answer. I want to be like, yeah, that's a good question. How is it going? I don't know. Because so much, it's so up and down. I've never done anything in life that feels so much like a roller coaster. Like, that's what it feels like. There are some days where, like, you're praying, and then somebody comes to the group or comes to know Jesus or responds to Jesus, and you're like, yeah! And you're just so excited. And then it can be like 2 minutes later, something bad happens, and you're like rubbing your face on the concrete, you know? And it's really, so life has been really up and down. But it's kind of fun to look back a year later on all that God has done. We haven't done anything except for show up every day. That's what somebody told us. Church planning is just about showing up. And so that's been our motto, like, just wake up each day and try to church plant, you know? And what's been really neat to see is how God has transformed this idea that we had into like an actual community of people that love Jesus and want to see other people love Jesus. And so last week we had kind of a highlight group. We took a couple pictures. This is our little house we live in Durango. It's 1,000 square feet, but everything in Durango is expensive. So we were just blessed to get this place. This is our little group. This last week we had 40 people at our group at our house, which for our little living room, this is pretty full. And the cool thing about it is it rained. It wasn't cool. So usually we do like adults outside, kids inside, but it was raining during church. It's on Wednesday nights. And so what do you do with 40 people in a 1,000 square foot house? So we did that, and then we put the little kids in a room. Micah watched the little kids in our bedroom, so they were on our bed. It's starting to sound like a weird cult, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. And then we said to the older kids, just play outside in the rain. They're like, yeah! So they're running around. So this is a picture of the kids outside in the rain. So anyway, God's really doing good things. And we're in the place right now where we're trying to figure out another place to move. So I think that's a good problem to have, that God is bringing people, and people that don't know God, and people that do, and people that are rallying around this idea of starting a church. So one thing I can say about being in Durango for us is that it is like sliced open the motives of our heart. It is like got to the real core of what we are doing for good reasons and what we're doing for bad reasons, right? And I can tell you there's days that I'm so stressed out just thinking like, what if this doesn't work? What if we can't get people to come? What if we don't build the church? What are people going to say if this thing doesn't succeed and we have to tell them we had to leave, limping with our heads down, right? What if? And it's been really easy to see how much I can get myself into this whole deal. Thinking like, well, maybe if this succeeds, then I can feel good about myself, and I can go back to Canyon View and I can say, look all that God's doing, you know? And so God has really allowed us to see when we really want to love people for their sake and when we're doing it for our sake, that maybe they'd respond to us and come to our church. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. This passage is just perfect for me coming back and talking about Durango. It's almost like it's a summary of our last year, what we've been learning. And my hope is that as we've been learning it, you too can sort of jump in and join us with that today. So let's pray that God will do that, and then we'll jump into what we're going to talk about. So Jesus, we just invite you. And as I look out on this room, Jesus, I see a bunch of people that you just adore, and people that you're moving in their life and that you are transforming things and doing things. And we pray that this moment for the next 30 minutes would be a moment where we get to transcend church and we get to just transcend into your kingdom, that we would get to feel and know and experience your love, and that you would change us because of it. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so we are in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Anybody ever heard this? At a wedding? Anyone? This is called the love chapter. And it's kind of a fun chapter because what Paul's really getting at here is figuring out what is this whole deal really about. And in many ways, like I said, in our church plant, we've been doing the same thing. We've been studying John. And as we go through John's heart is really to help you see who Jesus was and how he lived. And what we've been seeing is, like, what would it have been like to be in Jesus' head? And so we called this talk, Having the Eyes of Jesus, because I think it would be fascinating if we were able to put Jesus' head on our head and start to think and see like he did. It's really interesting. You go through John and you see these situations where Jesus is walking around and then all of a sudden he stops and he sees somebody, right? Like the Samaritan woman that he never should have talked to, all alone, just him and this Samaritan woman. And yet he looks right into her life and he used this analogy of water to say, man, you've had a few husbands, haven't you? What are you really thirsting for? Did you know that if you knew me, I would give you life beyond what these husbands are giving you? Right? Or later, what about John 8, where this woman is caught in adultery, and the religious leaders drag her out and throw her down in front of them. They never asked her what's going on in her life or what caused her to be in the situation that she was in. They just threw her out in front of Jesus. And instead of Jesus saying, oh, a teachable moment, he looks at the woman right in the eye. He engages with her. He sees what God saw when God created this woman. And he loves her in that moment in a way that changes her life forever. And so we've been on this journey of like, man, how can we be like that? How can we be the kind of people that are not just going from one thing to the next, but are seeing the people that God puts in our life? You know, I had this idea. I wanted to do a video where you like sped up somebody's life for a day, you know, like stick a GoPro on their chest or something. But then you slowed down every time they passed somebody and just started to ask the question, what's God doing in that person's life? What's God doing in this person's life? You know, it's like a virus. Imagine just even the people in this room, how many people we interact with in a day. I mean, in one day in Grand Junction. And then to start to think, man, what if we could have those eyes, the eyes of Jesus, that were motivated to see who he saw them as, the people as, and then he called it out in them. And so as we've been doing that, it's been quite a ride. I mean, you know, it's been really interesting. But a couple weeks ago, there was a story that I thought was worth sharing. I met with this girl who'd been coming to our church and off and on. And for about the last 7 years, she's skipped out on church. Finally, she just was fed up with all the religiousness, all the judgmentalismness, that's not a word, all of the people pointing fingers at her. She was just like, I'm done with this. But somehow somebody invited her that she came to our group. And she was very intrigued. And so I said, well, let's go get coffee and just talk. So we go to the coffee shop. And I swear her goal in our conversation was just to tell me, here's all the reasons that you should not want to talk to me ever again. You ever met somebody like that? They're just trying to prove to you that their life is so messed up that you should just like disown them, right? Because you're religious or something, right? And so how do you interact with somebody like that? What do you say? Like, it's okay, you're cool, or you're right, you're wrong. I mean, what do you say, right? And I was just praying, God, give me your eyes, give me your eyes, give me your eyes, give me your eyes as she's talking. And I was just trying to listen and be in the moment and not formulate some like magical response that's going to, change her life forever. I was just trying to be in that moment with her. And at the end, she was done and I had to go soon. And I just said, hey, I just want you to know that Jesus absolutely loves you. That when he looks at you, man, he just thinks you are the most incredible person. And then I felt like the Lord just started giving me things about her. So I started saying, you are this and you're this, and I can just see this heart in you. And I didn't address any of the bad stuff, right? I was just speaking to her about who I saw that God saw her to be. And she just started weeping uncontrollably. Like she had a hat on and she pulled it down like this. And then it got really awkward, right? People around are like, what is he doing to her? And I'm like, and finally I had my bag there and I just was like, well, because she just kept crying and I ran out of things to say. So I was like, gosh, see you later. And I left so awkwardly, I left my bag there, But later a friend of mine who she had invited this girl to come to our group said later that she had come to her right after that and just said that she was blown away. And that for like 30 minutes, she just talked about what it felt like to be fully accepted. I didn't do anything. I don't even know what I did. But somehow, seeing what Jesus sees in people has just this incredible power to change people's lives. So anyway, that's our goal today. Our goal today is ask this question: how can we have the eyes of Jesus? How can we walk around looking and thinking through his lens? And so, like I said, we're in Corinthians, and this is kind of a fun little book. Have you guys been enjoying Corinthians? I just like it because it makes me feel really good about my church, right? Because the Corinthian church sucked. Can I say that in church? They got it all wrong. Paul goes to this city, plants a church, leaves, and think, yeah, I think they got it together. And then they're like, during worship services, they're getting prostitutes to sleep with them so that they could experience worship better. And they're getting drunk during communion. Like, this is great wine. And it's just a weird church. They're filing lawsuits against each other, right? There's so all kinds of weird stuff, all right? And Paul is writing this letter trying to straighten them out. Like, man, you guys, I don't know what happened. Remember we were talking about Jesus, and then what is going on here, So he writes them and he addresses all these issues, right? But then he gets to 1 Corinthians 13. He gets to the love chapter, and he says, but look, this is what this whole deal is really about. And so that's what we're going to jump into as we look at this. And I think this is pretty good for us too. I'm not going to say that we're horrible as churches, but wouldn't you agree that in some way the church in America has some reform that needs to happen? That maybe in some way we're kind of missing the heart of Jesus as a whole. Maybe there's a reason so many young people are leaving the church, and it's not just because they're so weird, right? Maybe there's something to this idea that the church needs to be changed. And I think we're going to see a lot of it today and what needs to happen. So 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. If I have all prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have and deliver up my body to be burned, and I have not love, I gain nothing. Love, this is what it is. It's patient, it's kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist in its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love, it just never ends. As for prophecies, they're going to pass away. As for tongues, they'll cease. As for knowledge, sorry, professors, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial shall pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I become a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall fully know, or know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. All right, what this really is, this sermon on love, this is an opportunity for us to really examine how much we get love in our life. So that's what we're going to do. We've got 3 sections to this, all right? The first is examine our love. The second is experiencing what real love is. And the third is to evolve into love, to become people that love. And what I'm inviting you to as we go through this is kind of like something you can go back later during the week to kind of evaluate where you stand on what matters most in being somebody that follows Jesus. At the end of our life, when we die, we will be presented before God. And God will look through all of the stuff we did, all of the good things and the bad things. And he'll cut all that to the side and he'll say, let's look at this person's love. Because that will define if this person got it or not. Okay? And so today, we get the chance to do this early. We get the chance now to evaluate our lives and say, man, do I get it? Am I there? Am I tracking with Jesus? Do I have his eyes? Or do I have somebody else's eyes? Am I missing it? So the first thing that Paul calls us to do is examine the true nature of love. We talked about this, but what's the evaluator to know that you're doing well, right? I mean, I've wondered that in church planning a lot. Where's the standard? My church planning coach says that the major thing that he got wrong when he was planning the church is nothing was ever good enough. So he'd have something happen, and instead of being excited about what God was doing in the moment, he would always say, I need more. I need to do it better, right? And I can see that in my own life. With the church, it's like, okay, we're 25. We need to be 30. We're 30. We need to be 40. We're 40. We need to be 100. We need to be like this if we're going to be successful. I mean, what's it in your life? What's the standard that you're looking for that says, yeah, I'm really somebody who follows God? Maybe I read my Bible enough, or maybe I go to church, or what is it? I mean, check this resume out that Paul lays out as the wrong resume. This is pretty good. Imagine me describing this person. He speaks in the tongues of angels and men. Yeah, I was just hanging out with the angels earlier today, and they said, He has prophetic powers. Yeah, I just looked at somebody's life and I gave them a timeline of their entire history. No big deal. He understands all mysteries and is the smartest person in the world. They have all faith to move mountains. I don't like you there, Mesa. Let's move you over here. Good. All right, great. And they have sacrificed their body to the point of death. That's a pretty good resume, right? I mean, if Kirk introduced me that way, I'd walk up here like, man, yeah, right? And yet, Paul says that person missed it if they didn't have love. Like the true evaluator for somebody who follows Jesus actually has nothing to do with the output that you're putting out. It doesn't matter how many times you go to church or how many programs you're involved in or how many people you've saved in the last year or how much you help ladies across the street or how much you smile or whatever your evaluator is. What it has to do with is, do you genuinely care about the people that God has put you around? Do you have a deep, heartfelt desire for people to come to know Jesus? One thing I love about Wayne and Micah is they've known the Lord for about 4 years. And they had a pretty messy life before they came to know the Lord. And so when they experienced God's love, they just went all out to follow him. And so Wayne's favorite thing to do in life is to go down on the street and pray for people. That's his like sweet spot, man. You're like hitting home runs with Wayne when you're doing that, right? He'll talk to anybody. When we first met him, we were like, hey, let's go out for dinner. And then we're like, where's Wayne? And Micah's like, oh yeah, he does this a lot. He just saw somebody he's supposed to pray with. And I was like, am I supposed to be annoyed or excited, right? Come on, we're supposed to go, man, you know? He loves this stuff. But as he came to Durango and started learning about the culture of Durango, he realized, so Durango's 85% of people don't go to church, right? It's a very, what we would call a post-Christian culture. And I can tell you, very few times do I introduce myself as a pastor and somebody's like, wow, that's awesome. Usually people get that sideways, like itch in their neck, like, what? A pastor? You'd want to do that? You know, that's Durango. And so as we started talking about having this heart that cares for the people of Durango, one of the things that Wayne came to me and said is, what I feel like the Lord is really teaching me is that sometimes I care more about praying for people or doing the Christian thing than I actually care for that person. And so anyway, a couple weeks ago, he was praying and just spending time with the Lord, and he felt like the Lord spoke this very specific scripture to him. This never happens to me, but to him it did. And so he 1 Corinthians 4:5. I should actually read it. 1 Corinthians 4, right, Wayne? Yeah. For what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, with ourselves as servants for Jesus' sake. And he was praying that morning. He just said, that's it. I want to serve the people of Durango. Again, I wish I was more like Wayne. He just gets up, walks out of his house, and just starts walking down the streets of Durango. Who can I serve today, God? And so he's walking, and he's walking across the street, and there's another couple coming towards him, and as he walks, he looks up and kind of smiles, and he said the couple just kind of stops in the middle of the street and turns to him. And so he's like, all right, open door. So he starts talking to him. By the way, he's in the middle of the street. And so he's talking to them, and I'm like, did the cars come? He's like, no, nobody came. So he's talking to him and finds out that this guy just came back from Norway or Sweden to bury his brother. I was dealing with an unbelievable amount of pain. And he said, well, bro, can I pray for you? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, whatever, you know. So they grabbed hands, again, in the middle of the street, starts praying for him, said, amen. Well, hey, God bless you guys. I'll just keep praying for you. And he starts walking away. And he said this couple was like this. And he's like walking away, and he's like, and he looks awkward, and he's like, he's walking, and he's like, they're just standing in the middle of the street like, did we just see an angel? Right? And the reason I love that story is because, see, we can do all the right things. Our church, this church here, man, we do a lot of right things. But the most important thing is why we do those right things. I think we're all in this process of examining, do we actually care about this world? One of the best advices that Kirk ever gave me when we were moving to Durango was, pray that God gives you a heart for the city. And I can remember when that happened. We were actually here like 3 months ago, and we were sharing with a group of people in one of the side rooms. This is what God's doing, and this is what it's been like. And then we started describing our friends that didn't know God, that we've been praying for to come to know God, that they would experience his love. And I just started weeping, like the weird kind of weeping, the kind where it's like, I can't keep talking right now. And I'm like, what's happening? I'm just talking about people. But I realized God was starting to give me his heart for his people. And I was starting to look at them and say, man, if I could just do anything to help them know the love of God. And I can say that since that moment, it's like a switch has flipped. And the way that I interact with people and see people and hope for people is all through this lens of hopefully a little bit more of what God's lens is for those people. So in this examining thing, what about you? What's your heart like? Well, here's a good question. When was the last time you wept for this city? Like, I'm talking like you emotionally were moved because of the brokenness in Grand Junction. If there's one thing that our church needs, church in America, church here, church in Durango, we need to have a genuine heart for the people of the city. We need to care that there are people that are dying that do not know God and will be eternally split apart from him. That needs to bother us. It needs to give us pain, and it needs to motivate action. And if we're just in our little church thing, going to church service, talking about all them people that don't get God, we are missing it. Totally missing it. We got to care. We got to care. The second thing then is experience. The real question is, what do we do if our hearts aren't in the right place? I probably can't use this analogy either, but I like to call it constipated Christianity. This is like what I think a lot of the church teaching is a lot of times. It's like, you don't have enough of that. You need to get more of it. And it's like, okay. Right? Like, sorry, bad picture, right? But I mean, how do you get it? How do you get more love? How do you genuinely change in love? Do you make yourself cry, put in a little eye drop in? You know? How do you allow your heart to be motivated for the people around you? What do we do to do that? There's the answer. Thank you, Paul. Paul says we have to experience that love. Now, this is cool. This next section, he's talking about what love is. The first one, he's saying, look, you can do a lot of stuff where you think you get it, but you don't have love. And then he says, here's what love is. And we have to look at Paul's life when we look at this. Paul is a guy who experienced the love. And if you know his story, he was the guy that persecuted Christians. He was filled with hate. He killed people. He had the sacrifice thing down. He had the pride thing down. I mean, I imagine Paul walking around like this. He was the Pharisee of Pharisees. People bowed before him. So basically, he had everything except for the heart. And God met him on his road to a city, Damascus. And when God met him, he spoke love, even though Paul didn't deserve it. And so when Paul's talking about love here, he's not talking about some like, hey, love is this, and it's like some Merriam-Webster dictionary thing. He's saying, here's what Jesus has been to me. So let me read this, and let's read it from Paul's perspective, saying, this is what Jesus did to me. All right? This is what he said. Jesus is patient and kind. Jesus doesn't envy or boast. He's not arrogant. He's not rude. He doesn't insist in his own way. He's not irritable or resentful. He doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. See, Jesus, my Jesus, he bears all things. He believes all things. He hopes all things. And he endures all things. See, this whole following Jesus Christianity deal, it's about a person. His name is Jesus. And he embodies and lives out that love for us. My guess is that many of us came here today thinking, maybe we didn't think this out loud, but wondering, I wonder what God really thinks of me. I know I certainly wonder that a lot. There's a lot of times in life where I'm thinking, man, if I could just be a better Christian, and if I could just stop this sin, if I could just love more people, if I could just get more people to come to my church, if I could just convince more people that they needed to do this, I think maybe then Jesus would be more proud of me. You know, maybe then he'd be satisfied with who I am. And what Paul is saying is, have you gotten this, Corinthian church? That Jesus loves you no matter what? I mean, this is the heart of Paul's entire message. We like to call it the gospel. That is the good news of Jesus that says, even while we are sinners, in the middle of our brokenness, rebelling against God, saying, no thanks, I'm not interested, Jesus came to live a life of love for us, and then even says, I came to live my life to serve, not to be served. And at the end of my life, I'm going to give my life as a ransom for many. Here's one fascinating idea that we've been thinking through. And that is that as Jesus interacted with everybody he interacted with, he looked into their eyes saying, I'm going to die for you at the end of my life. I'm going to give it all for you. And so when he interact, I mean, how can you have more love than that for somebody, right? So all of his interactions, these eyes that he was looking through, the eyes were, I'm willing to do anything so that you can know the love and acceptance that God created you to know, right? And so how do we grow in love? How can we become more like the loving kind of person we're supposed to be? Well, we have to experience it. We have to know it. We have to become good at experiencing it and repetitious at saying, God, I want to know and experience your love for me. And this is what happens at church. I can even see it as I'm here. There's been people coming to our group that every time they come, they just weep through the whole thing. They just cry. I mean, there's like little tears that they're trying to hold back. And we're just talking about a book. We're just saying words. What's happening? Why are they moved to emotion? I can tell you. It's because Jesus loves them and is coming near to them, and he's transforming them. And so when was the last time you experienced God's love? Maybe here's a better question. What's something in your life or in your past that you don't think Jesus would be okay with, that he's disappointed you in you for, and that has kept you from really coming to him? See, Jesus isn't that kind of God. He's not the kind of God that sits back and says, well, man, if you fix your crap, then I'll step forward. He's the kind of God that moves in while we're broken, while we're in the middle of whatever we're going through. Just comes in and walks with us, accepts us. The final thing that Paul is saying is we evolve. We have to evolve into love. We become more like him. John Wimber, who started the Vineyard, he used to say, keep the main thing, and the plain thing, the plain thing. What Paul's saying is, look, Corinthians, there's a lot of plain things here. They're important. Sexual immorality stuff, this is important. Lawsuits, that's a big deal. Right? Getting drunk at communion, that's probably not a good idea. But that's not the main thing here, Corinthians. Here's what the main deal is. It's the love that you have for people. It's reaching up and knowing my love, and it's reaching out and giving other people my love. That is what this whole thing is about, right? Jesus said that. What's the heart of the commandments? To love God and love others as you love yourself, right? And so Paul, going with that idea, says we should be all morphing or evolving into people who love others. Here's what he says. Love never ends. Prophecies are going to pass away. Tongues, they're going to cease. Knowledge is going to get old. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I become a man, when I was a child, I did childish things. When I become a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. It's kind of like, it's those, you know what drunk glasses are? You ever seen those? Come on, Christians. Get out more. There are those goggles that make everything look like you're drunk, right? And they hand them out to try to get you to not drink and drive. Well, that's kind of what it's like when we become Christians. When we first become baby Christians, we start to know God's love for us. We put on these drunk goggles and we walk around, and we can kind of see shapes moving around us, but mostly we're just trying to we're trying to step, you know? We're trying to just make it through life. But then at some point we start trading those out for glasses like my mom's or dad's that are a little bit less fuzzy, right? And so then we can see people a little bit more, and we can start to see more what God's doing, and we're a little bit less concerned with our own, how do we get through life? And then we trade those out, and a little bit clearer, and that's what Paul's saying. As you evolve as a believer, if there's one thing that should be marked by your love, or by your life, it's your love, and it should be evolving. We never get to the Christendom, we're done, you know? We've been fully sanctified. We can go home now. We don't have to love anymore, right? Our hearts burn more and more for the things of God. And in some ways, life gets harder and harder because you start caring more about your neighbors and the people around you and the people in broken relationships and the people just doing things that are dumb, right? Our hearts start to genuinely hurt more for those people who are hurting. It's kind of like Ingrid. Sometimes my daughter, she's 3, almost 4, and there's some times where I'm like, what is going on with you? Are you always going to be like this? Because it's driving me crazy, you know? And then there's other times where I see these moments of a genuine heart being changed. Like a couple days ago, we told her that we could go get ice cream. And we were out of money for the month because it was the end of the month. So we said, go get money out of your piggy bank, right? And so she's pulling money out. We're counting it. And the first thing she says is, she goes, Mommy, I want to go find some people that don't have money so that they can have money to buy candy. And I was like, whoa, yes, you know, like, and in many ways, that's what this experience in Durango has been for us. I mean, talk about a challenge. I've never had a harder year in my life. I mean, trying to figure out how to love people and encourage them to come to church and know Jesus and do that as a lifestyle. I mean, that's been incredibly hard. And yet, what I see in my heart is that God is starting to change me. He's starting to move me more towards the things that he cares about. I feel more desperate than ever to see God move in our country and in my city. And I just have this great dream and passion and vision to see people knowing the life of Jesus. And I dream about, I sit in bed and I think, God, what would happen if everybody in this city had the opportunity to know you for who you really are? I mean, so many people have such a bad picture of Christians. And I'm thinking, man, if you could just know what it feels like to be fully accepted, to be free from your sin, to be loved unconditionally, and to get to serve in the greatest purpose of the world, man, what would happen? And that's my hope for you. That's my hope for this church, is that we would be the kind of church that puts our stake in the ground on the love deal, right? That if, more than anything else, if we're going to get one thing right, it's going to be that we are people that genuinely care about our city. We weep for our city. We love our neighbors. We will sacrifice our time, our money, our energy, everything to help people experience Jesus because he is that good to us. So as you go this week, worship team, you guys can come up. As you go this week, I just want to encourage you to go back over what we talked about today. To take a chance to really look at your life for what it is, to examine your heart, to experience God's love, and to evolve more into who God is calling you to grow to be. I want to close by sharing a story about Madison, one of the Buxton's younger kids. She's 7. And the reason I love this story is because sometimes I think in Christendom we can get this idea that following God and doing the God things are for the mature people, right? And then we write ourselves off. I mean, I'd love to have everybody close your eyes and just see how many people are like, yeah, that's not for me. Just because we have this idea that you got to be more mature than I am or something to do this, right? Oh, this is for that person, not for me, right? I think the reality is it's for all of us. I mean, side note, but can you imagine if everybody in here offered one invitation a week to people that you know? Well, what's there, 1,000 people here? That's 1,000 people a week times how many weeks are there in the year? 52? Is that 52,000 invitations in a year that we could give to people, inviting them to experience the love of God, motivated out of a heart that genuinely cares for them? I mean, some of you people that are in the bad life, you got a greater opportunity than most of us in the good life, right? Because you're around people that need it more. And as Christians, we can get all weird and into our little bubbles, right? I just want to share this story. Last week, Madison, she's 7, was at this event where her friend, one of her friends, she just met this friend, her friend's mom was really mean to him, like really mean. They were back in this room, and this friend's mom like just said some things that no parent should ever say to a kid. And Madison's heart instantly broke for this kid. And she first goes to her mom and is like, Mom, you know, and I was in the other room, but I could hear her just talking about like, this isn't right. We got to do something. Like, no kid should be treated like this, right? And then the rest of the day, she spent time with this kid. She just walked with this kid. Everything this kid did, she did, because she wanted this kid to know God's love. And then that night, she went home and she couldn't sleep. And she was crying, saying, Mom, I just want this person to know God's love, and I want this person to know what it's like to have a mommy that truly loves them. And I thought that was such a good analogy for who we are supposed to be as people. So as we close, let's stand. We're going to sing a song. I just invite you to allow God to start to speak to your heart, all right? And then we're going to have a response that we get to do afterwards.